Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of dance, film, music, theater, literature, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I'm thrilled to have as my guest on Creative Focus today, the author of Poetic Memories of a Lifetime, Miss Jean Abernathy-Smith. Miss Smith, welcome to Creative Focus. Let's chop it up.
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you.
Thanks.
So, you originally were born in Detroit, right?
Yes.
And what brought you to Cleveland?
Okay, I married a fellow from Cleveland.
Okay, a fellow from Cleveland.
Real nice man, believe it or not.
Okay.
At least we're still friends today, but I married him and decided to move to Cleveland because he was working for AT&T.
Okay.
And I was working for Michigan Bell. But I wanted to get promoted, but he was a smart man. So I knew he was on his way up. So I decided on Cleveland. He would have moved to Detroit, but reluctantly I came to Cleveland. I hate to leave my mother, mainly my mother, but she encouraged me, but she kept Keith. He was my only son at the time.
Right.
And she kept him, but I did come to Cleveland.
And are you happy you made that move?
I'm very happy I made that decision.
So I noticed that you've been writing poetry for like almost 40 years. What prompted you, what motivated you to start to write poetry?
Well, because of my mother.
Okay.
I belonged to a very large church in Detroit, Michigan, and one day it was going to be Mother's Day, one Sunday, and they asked me to write a poem about my mother. My mother was a very, very Christian woman, very devoted and quite a worker in the church. But believe it or not, I could not write a poem about my mother. As much as I loved her, as much as a wonderful woman she was, I couldn't think of enough to say about my mother that I felt was fitting. So, but it bothered me for years. I got up to the podium as a girl, I was a girl, about 16, 17, and I spoke about my mother, what a wonderful woman she was, but I couldn't write a poem. So as years went by, I wrote my first poem, believe it or not, about my husband, Mr. Abernathy. And I was surprised, sat down one day and just went to writing. And that poem is not in my book. I don't know where it is because it was the first poem,
Okay.
But it was a good poem. So after I transferred from Michigan Bell to Ohio Bell, I became their poet, if you will.
Okay.
Every time I turned around, somebody was leaving and they would ask me to write something. And I would do it in a poetic form. And so I don't know where those poems are, but every time somebody would leave, they'd come up to me, Jean, will you write a poem? Will you write a poem? Will you write a poem? So that's how I really got started.
Talk briefly about your career at AT&T and politics.
Okay. Had quite a life. I transferred from Michigan Bell to Ohio Bell. At the time, I had a brother-in-law who also was high up in AT&T. And they were in the process of promoting people. Unfortunately, as high as I went up the scale and did a good job, they didn't promote me. So when I transferred to Ohio Bell, I had this on my record that I was promotable, but they did not promote me. Was surprised. Back in the day, you know how it was. We just had a hard time getting the jobs we wanted.
Right.
So finally, someone introduced me to Stephanie Tubbs Jones. And I met her and called her. Finally got the nerve to call her and tell her my situation, that I wanted to be promoted, but I was not being promoted. She took my case, and when Ohio Bell heard about me filing with EEOC, they quickly promoted me. So that's how I got my start in management.
Okay.
Before I was just a worker. And so we did meet after that, but she told me when my case was accepted with Ohio Bell to get out of the department I was in, move to another department. So I moved to sales, marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had quite a career there. I enjoyed working in marketing and was there for many, many years. I retired from AT&T. I went from Ohio Bell to AT&T, and it was quite a career.
We have a mutual friend, Peter Lawson Jones. How did you meet Peter?
Well, Peter is a dear friend. Everybody loves Peter that I know. I haven't heard anything bad about Peter Lawson Jones. He became an actor.
Yeah, we did a couple of shows together,
Oh,
Peter and
okay.
I, at Karamu, yes.
Very good.
Yes.
I saw him in a couple of plays.
And I've had him on my show a couple of times.
All right. He's a good person. I met him through politics, because after I'd been in Cleveland for a while, I ran into one of the mayors of Cleveland. He's a mayor now, Brad Sellers. And his mother and I were good friends. And whenever her son graduated with 1 year before my son, so they were in school together. So it caused us to always be at meetings and school board meetings and things at the same time. So one day in the parking lot, before I met Peter, she said to me, "Jean, why don't you run for the school board? You're real active and talkative and active and, and interested in what's going on with our children." And I told her, "No, not me, not me." And so then I ran into Peter. One day, Marcia Fudge asked me to pass out her literature at this high school. And I went there, and Peter showed up. His wife was passing out literature for him. And so I met him on the campaign trail.
Okay.
And we just struck up a good friendship, and he encouraged me to go into politics.
And he encouraged me to have you on my show.
Did he really? Well, he encouraged me to go into politics. So I did contact Jean and said, her name was Jean, just like mine, okay. Jean Sellers. So I tried to talk her into running for the school board because they needed someone. And she kept saying, "No, I want you to run. If you run, I will help you." So Brad Sellers' mother was on my literature when I first ran. And I had my first meeting at her house. He didn't know it. He was gone playing basketball for Chicago or whatever.
Yes, Chicago Bulls.
But she and I remained very good friends. And that's how between her and Peter is when I got my start.
So what inspired you to write the book up?
Well, it was Christmas time, and my son was married to a young lady that I introduced him to, thank God, because I did have one grandson, which, I'm real proud of, and I wanted a grandchild. They gave me, the two of them one day gave me a Christmas gift, and it was just an empty box. I opened it, it was an empty box. I said, "What's this box for? It's a beautiful box, but why are you just giving me a box?" And they said, "We want you to put your poems in it." My son said, "Ma, you write poems all the time and you just have them everywhere over the house. Start saving them and put them in a box." So I went through the house and gathered up what I could of poems that I had let drift around the house. And to my behold, he had a purpose. He and his wife had a purpose, Rachel. they were saving my poems. I didn't know that they wanted me to save them for them, because they had an idea, and this book was the idea.
So how was it hard to select the poems? I mean, if you've got so many poems, was it hard to make a final selection at all?
Well, some I didn't put in the box, but if it was about a relative, because I wrote so many about relatives when they would pass, they just started looking for me to come up to the podium and say something. And when I said something, it would be in a poetic form. And it wasn't hard to select, because most times if I wrote something, I just threw it in the box.
Gotcha.
Some things got lost in the shuffle, because, I didn't know that they had planned on doing a book. I just thought they were interested in me saving my poems. And one day, they showed me this.
Do you read the poems out loud? Like, do you write a verse and then read it out loud, or you wait until the entire poem is completed? Or what's that process like for you?
Well, I never thought about it, but the process, I would say, I would write verse by verse.
Okay.
I start the verse from somewhat of the beginning. I tried to anyway, of the beginning. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've scratched on many poems. My favorite and best poems didn't even get in this book. I left it at work. It was about our mayor. I wrote a poem about our mayor. They asked me to do a poem for his birthday. And I read it. We had a public gathering, and I read it at the public gathering. So I would say that I would...
Who was the mayor?
Oh, Mayor Michael Booker. Michael L. Booker.
Okay.
That was my best poems. It didn't get in this book because I left it at work.
And that was at Highland
Hills. I moved to Highland Hills back in 1977.
Okay.
Long time. So I moved, I was on council with Mayor Booker, and he got to know me that way. But basically, I knew the person, and I would just, once I made one verse, it took me into the next verse, and then the next verse, and something.
What I admire about your poetry so much is the rhyme. I'm a poet, but I never liked to rhyme. It was difficult for me to rhyme, so I stayed away from that. And that's part of what I really admired about the poetry in this book. Why don't you read something for me?
Okay.
You read one and I'll read one.
Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say you read one too.
They're all so.
There's one poem. It's kind of short, so I'll read that one.
Okay, I'm gonna read my favorite.
It's called Disruptions.
Disruptions. Okay.
I used to belong years ago to Toastmistress. And one day, after being there a couple of years, I felt like I was good enough to write, just write something, a story, or not a poem, but I wrote about disruptions. And after I finished writing, I don't remember what it said, but somehow I needed to close it in my mind with a poem.
Okay.
So this is the poem that I close.
Disruptions.
Disruptions.
Okay.
It's called Disruptions, Disruptions. Go hide behind a tree. I get so tired of you bothering me. Every time I think life's a little bit sweeter, you come around again with another repeater. Life has enough troubles without your interference, dropping by and disrupting me with your unwanted appearance. You are always unexpected. You never plan in advance. You never check my schedule or question my finance. But maybe I should stop feeling so negatively about you. for life with some disruptions could have a positive side too. This unwanted inconvenience could mean improvement instead of pain. For it's been said over and over, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So let's not get discouraged, sitting around looking fretful, weeping with frustrations and feeling so regretful. It's not always in our best interest to question why, for disruptions in our lives could lead to rainbows in the sky.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And I wrote Gene that part. So
That's beautiful.
thank you.
I'm going to try.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to read A New Beginning. That's my favorite
Oh,
poem.
I like that. Okay, thank you.
We often wish for another chance to make fresh new beginnings, a chance to blot out old mistakes, a chance failures and to turn failures into winnings.
Yeah, thank you.
We think it can be difficult to make a brand new start, but reach for that strong desire that's deep within your heart. Live just a little better and always be forgiving. Remember to add a little sunshine to the world in which we're living. Never give up or give in to despair and think that you are through, for there's always a tomorrow and a chance to start anew. I love that poem.
It's hard to believe I wrote it. Oh my God, thank you for reading that.
So, Ms. Abernathy-Smith, what impact do you want your poetry to have on people?
Well, based on what you just read, a lot. I hope it helps people do better, be better, enjoy life better, be a better person. Because just glancing at my book, you know, I've read it long before when it was first printed, but glancing every now and then back into it, it seems like words that can help people.
Certainly, certainly. Now, do you always rhyme or do you write some poetry without rhyme?
Always rhyme.
You always rhyme.
Always. It just comes to me. I don't know. I never thought of myself as a poet until my son took that box. He and my girlfriend, Jackie McDonald, that's a very good friend of mine. They took my book, that box, and put it in the form. I don't even know how it came to be, but it came to be through them.
You are a poet. And Peter Lawson told me, he said, you've got to get her on your show because she writes
Tell Peter I love him.
fabulous poetry.
Thank you.
So do you enjoy presenting poetry? Do you normally, have you had a book launching yet?
No.
Do you plan to, or?
If my son has anything to do with it,
he's gonna get you a book launch.
He's gonna make sure I don't just die. He doesn't want this to die.
How do you think poetry has impacted your life?
Well, it's gave me many friends, especially when I worked for the phone company, because so many people, I wrote about people I barely knew. One poem is in here, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Someone called me. I didn't even know the person. They heard me read a poem at a funeral about a friend of mine that passed. And they called me because a son had passed. And they wanted me to write a poem from their son to their mother, the son that had passed. And I did. And so it's made me get to know people that I didn't know, and became friends with people that I, really weren't friends with.
So over the years, have you ever gone to any spoken words or any venues where they just read poetry, just not your not your interest, or?
I've never done that, but you know, I'm not saying I won't, but you know, I'm getting up in age, so I'm not sure. But if anybody invited me, now when I worked for Highland Hills, it was his administrators, Michael Booker, the mayor, his administrative staff was not large. So they would come to me, so-and-so is leaving, Gene, write a poem. So-and-so is being promoted, can you write a poem? You know, and then I would hear from someone on a personal basis about writing a poem. So I would read it at the gathering, you know, that kind of thing.
What advice would you give somebody who wanted to start out writing poetry from your experience?
Right. Sit down and write. Whatever is on your mind, your thoughts, your prayers, pray to God, because I think one of the things that helped me is that I did pray. And I asked God to give. If someone came to me and said, Gene, I want you to write, I would pray, Lord, give me something to say. So if someone really wanted to start down this path, either think about it. If the words are in their mind, let it be put on paper, and it'll come. It'll come. Don't waste a talent. Don't waste it. I never thought of my poems as a talent, but I guess it is a talent. Here I am today with you. So
do you think poetry, your creation of your beautiful creation of poetry, changed your life in any way outside of the fact that it helped you to meet people and get out? I mean,
yes, it did, because I remember when my son went to our pastor and asked him to acknowledge me and my book. And he did one Sunday. I think that was the first time. After that, so many people in my church came up to me, I want a book, or congratulations. They wish me well. And that meant a lot to me.
Did you have a big retirement party? Or?
I had a big retirement party, and at that retirement party, that's when my son came out with the book.
Oh, that's when he came out with the book. So it was a surprise.
It was kind of a surprise. I didn't know. Well, they kind of indicated, but I didn't. I had never seen this. The picture, you know. This is me when I was on the school board.
Okay.
And so that meant a lot to me. And they took that opportunity to let my seniors know that, you know, Miss Abernathy-Smith published a book. And a lot of people wanted it, you know. I told my son, I'm giving them away.
Yeah, I heard you were giving them away.
Away.
If somebody wanted to buy the book of poetry, of wonderful poetry, where can they buy the book?
Amazon.
Amazon.
Just call Amazon and they can get a book.
Go online.
Go online and order it through Amazon. That's the only way I know.
Okay.
If you call me,
that's the easy way. That's the easiest way.
And a lot of people have ordered it through Amazon.
Yeah, because I got my copy on Amazon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And thank you so much for signing it too.
Oh, no problem.
So what's next for you, Gene? What do you got plans? I know you got another book of poetry somewhere.
I see them I have what I call a computer room.
Okay.
And I see poems centered around my computer room.
Okay.
That I should have probably put in this book, but they didn't.
Do you have a poem in your head? Do you have a poem, you know, that keeps speaking to you that you haven't actually created yet? Anything? An idea?
Other than my mother.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm working on
Finally, after all these years.
Finally working on a poem about my mother.
How close?
I didn't bring it because I'm not finished.
Okay. Are you close to completion?
I'm close to completion.
Okay.
But I'm not. It's so much more I really want to say. But that's the only, because one day I was sitting and thinking, I have a sister. It's only two of us left, and she's in a wheelchair. Now, I wrote about her husband when he died. She called me, Jean, Cecil's gone, can you write a poem? So I wrote a poem. That's how normally when someone dies, they'll call me and can you speak? If I speak, I'm gonna write a poem. Okay. But I didn't write about my sister, and she became very on top of her game on politics.
Okay.
But what hurts me the most is I didn't write about my mother. I started a poem, but I haven't finished it. That's the only one.
Well, let's get it done.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
And I'll send it to you.
I'm honored to have you on my show, and I love your book of poetry, and I look forward to the next book.
Well,
thank you so much, dear.
Thank you so much, Mr. Calhoun. Appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. So that's it, Cleveland. We're out. But remember, a true artist is not only inspired, but inspires others. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV 20 and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time, be well, be safe.